I mean, the nation's grid's up to it unless you're in California and it's 100 degrees outside.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
You better go buy one of those Cool Breeze fans from Walgreens where you it's I was watching this dude on YouTube. It's called Mav. I think he like travels around. Like he's got like a pop-up camper on the back of a Volkswagen Bug, and he like tried one of those Cool Breeze fans, and it's essentially just blowing. It's not an air conditioner. It's a fan that blows water on you at the end of the day,
Mm.
which is like the last thing you want is like more humidity, right? But that's pretty much what you're going to be stuck with when that grid goes down.
That's so true. That's true. That's a lesson you learn early growing up in Southeast Asia. Like those fans that blow water at you, just not a great idea.
I mean, what did you do when it was too hot?
Oh, air conditioner.
Yeah, that doesn't mean like, what if you didn't have any air conditioning?
Like pools were very common. So not every, but a lot of like apartment buildings had a pool. So you'd find a lot of people at the pool. Um, Cold drinks. I don't know.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of pools in my neighborhood. You know,
Yeah.
if you had a basement, that's pretty much where we people went underground when it got too hot.
Mm.
At least
Yeah.
at least in Michigan, the basements are they'll stay like high 60s. That was if you didn't have a
Comfortable.
basement, you're comfortable. If you didn't have a basement, you're screwed. And if you lived in anything with like more than one floor, you were. That's probably how they invented the air fryer. It's how they figured out because you see like if you're on the 10th floor, your gas is cooking. Like probably like, oh shit, that's how we're gonna invent the air fryer. Okay, probably inspired by that. Hey, I was talking about this article. Um, I'm not a huge fan of electric cars because I like engines. I still like mechanical watches. Like I still like old school shit people build with their hands like that. I like engines. I like diesel engines. I like turbos. I like superchargers. I like shit that's about to blow up. I just don't want it to. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I want it to be close. I like the sound. I like the power. I just don't want it to blow up. It's kind of a ticking time bomb, but you don't want it to blow up.
You
And
live on the edge.
yeah, it's hey man, when I was into like the boating on the speed side of things, once I learned how many people die trying to break the water speed record, I stopped wanting to go fast on the water. Um, a lot of people died doing that shit. But
Ugh.
anyways, I'm not, to give perspective, I'm not a huge electric car fan. I am coming around to them because I feel like the technology is finally getting to a point where I would consider one, such as the new Hummer truck, for example. And not even saying I would buy one because it's just based on how I tow and how I travel. I just ordered a new F-250 diesel King Ranch. Um, I still like it for the convenience of how far I can tow and how much power it has. But the new Hummer electric looks interesting to me. But that's probably the first car. I was never a big fan of Teslas, for example. Um, so, for the perspective being that I'm not a huge electric car fan at the moment, I still find myself defending them at times
Yeah.
because I feel like there's like the truth, and the truth doesn't have to match up with how I feel, right? Or what I like or what I prefer. So I get in this conversation every once in a while. People swing by the house, and a lot of old school automotive guys in Detroit, and it's we don't got enough power to power all these cars. So I'm like, yeah, we got some extra power. Yeah, no, we don't. And I'm like, have another Budweiser. Shut the fuck up. And so I try explaining it to them. It's a little bit of research, and I'm not a power grid expert. Let me tell you that. Just from doing some reading, and I'm not saying from like CNN or Fox News, like some other just basic reading. We seem to have excess power at night, particularly when it's not super hot out, for example. During the day in the summertime, everyone's air conditioners are running. We tend to consume a lot of power, but at night we tend to have excess power, and you can often verify that because what the rate you get charged at night is often cheaper than daytime.
Mm.
So getting your kilowatts at night is usually cheaper than daytime kilowatts because there's some extra supply. So that extra supply could go to charging cars, for example. So that alone tells you that we do have some capacity in the national electric grid to deal with at least some uptick in electric cars, for example. And they don't want to hear that, and it's like, oh, it takes 9 hours to charge a battery. I'm like, I'm sure some manufacturers it does. Tesla's obviously, I think they're number one in that game. They crush it in terms of how fast they can charge. I think about a half an hour, you can get a pretty good charge and go quite a ways. It's like 45 minutes on a supercharger. Another myth. So I find myself getting in these conversations, but I take that conversation somewhere else, Kane. It's we need to build some more plants, probably, or maybe we don't. I don't know that answer. I still think that 10 years from now, we might not even be talking about electric cars. There might be some new technology.
Right.
If you look at how much technology's changed, we've not even hit the tip of the iceberg of what we can do. So who knows? But I I'm talking to these people and I'm trying to have a rational conversation with, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna drag them into the deeper water. Maybe I can drown them out here. I'm gonna drag their ass out here. Or I might give them something they want to hear. That's a different angle. And Kane, that thought is, we take for granted how nice it is to just fill up a gas tank in 3 minutes and be able to go 400 or 500 miles.
Right.
So there's been times when I've not had power for 7 days. So if a whole metro area is blacked out, how the fuck do you charge the car?
It's true.
And it's like, okay, then you need a generator. So then I'm gonna need propane or natural gas. Or a hell of a lot of solar panels. How long would it take to charge a battery pack off of solar panels?
Yeah.
Which also isn't a luxury if you live in an apartment, for example, or a condo.
Right.
So I think back to when I didn't have power for 7 days, and I'm like, so how would I have charged my car? I would have had to travel somewhere far away, or what is the military going to bring in large mobile generators so hundreds of thousands of people can charge their cars?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know if I see that happening. If you look at every natural disaster around this country, we can't ever get our shit together. But then it's like it's that stored energy, right? Now your car would have X amount of energy stored in the battery before the power went out. What happens if your battery was at 10% and that happened?
Right.
Well, now you're fucked, right? You're gonna be out there like, give me one of those little like wind up chargers. I'm gonna have to crank a thing with my hand and put some power in my car. These are things I start thinking about because I know we have excess power at night, but it's clear that our grid does get stressed at times. We've had big blackouts.
Mm-hmm.
California still suffers. We're like one major plant from having issues again, right? Or look at what happened in Texas with the snowstorm, for example. Our electric grid is not 100% reliable.
You make a strong point. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's ever going to be, at least in the near future. Not as reliable as those big ass pipelines that keep pumping that gasoline. But I think the key is if you needed to fuel up 100,000 vehicles, how much faster you could do it with, gasoline or diesel versus trying to charge 100,000 electric cars, for example. And this is one of those things I think about because the world's getting a little more dynamic, and whether it's weather, whether it's geopolitical shit that's going on, terrorism, you don't know what's going to happen, like at least in my lifetime. But I think about that. Is that something you thought about?
Not to that level, but the idea that the infrastructure is going to have to change to accommodate this much like electric vehicle usage, I think is interesting to think about. But you're right. I've never extrapolated it out to where it's a national security risk. But yeah, you've made some great points. I don't have a lot to add.
Look, if you got um, a 500 gallon or 1,000 gallon propane tank buried in the ground at home, and you got a decent sized generator, then you could charge your car. You could probably shut down your house, or put your house on the minimum shit, and you would have enough kilowatts coming out of your generator to charge your car, at least until your propane tank ran out, right? Or natural gas, and that's assuming that you. I don't know if the natural gas system can handle everyone like running a furnace and a generator. Do we
Right.
have that kind of natural gas? Um, but I just think about looking down the pipeline here of some of the disasters we had and all the things that are going on. Supply chain issues that can happen, semiconductor issues, things that can happen at power plants, and terrorism. If they shut down the electric grid, you're screwed. And that, then they might say, well, okay, then gas pumps might not work either. But I think they would find a way through generators and whatnot to keep that kind of moving.
Mhm.
But imagine if you didn't have a car to go get supplies, to go get medical supplies, to go pick up if you had to get water, if you had to get food, because you're sitting at home with a car battery that's out of juice.
Man, yeah, I'm gonna buy a couple bicycles.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a little bit of a ride, but and I don't think
Oh,
that's the
dear.
reason not to have electric cars. I just think it's something to think about.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, it's people are worried about it. We're not gonna have enough electricity for these cars, and I'm like, well, and I think in my lifetime, I'm gonna see. I saw the pandemic, right? I saw 9/11. I had the pandemic. Um, I think there's some more shit I'm gonna see in the next 50 years. Whether it's another world war, whether it's a major terrorist attack, maybe it's another pandemic of a different scale, maybe it's a civil war. Like, I don't know, but over a 50-year timeline, I believe something else is going to happen again. Nobody knows what that is. It could be extreme weather. I don't fucking know, man.
Yeah.
I just know over any 50-year time frame, usually something bad happens. And I think about, well, food, water, shelter, and your one great escape is your car. You can get in your car and go. Imagine if you had an escape cane, but the place you went didn't have power either. What do you do?
Right. Right.
Um,
True.
it's just random things to think about. But again, I've had no power for a week before, and now I often go through power without power for 2 or 3 days or 4 days when a storm comes through. I mean, I'm on a generator now, so it's not a big deal. But that one time that I went 7 days, well, all my food spoiled. There was a boil alert for the water, so you could shower with the water, but you couldn't drink the fucking water. It wasn't a good feeling, dude.
Yeah.
But then I
Yeah.
also think, like, I also wouldn't have had a car. I just would have had to go somewhere else. But it's like, then what happens when everyone else goes somewhere? Like, there's just shit to think about, and maybe we always need a kind of a hybrid of, you know, petrol-based and electric vehicles until something else is created that can be refilled on demand, kind of like a gasoline car is. But I'm
Yeah.
sure somebody else has brought this up. This is not. It might be an original thought to me. I'm sure someone else has thought of this, but it's not something I ever hear people talk about.
Well, it's got me thinking too, James, because I think oftentimes when you hear people go like not anti, but have pushback against electric vehicles, it's easy to point to say like, oh well, you're obviously a dinosaur or whatever. And you brought the point earlier where like you like mechanical watches and things, and I'm starting to like think that I'm a fan too, right? You know that I don't
Yeah.
have a digital watch, but it's just that idea that like I think progress is great, but there are certain practical matters, or there's a practicality around having things analog, and just because you push back against EVs doesn't mean that you haven't thought about all of these things. And you bringing up so many interesting points has made me think like, okay, there's a lot more that goes into, the electric cars look cool or whatever, but there's a lot more that goes into making it viable for an entire country. Like the little cars themselves are just like the very first thing that you see. And I think it can get a little bit messy when you just think of those as like the end all be all. Everybody should have an electric car. Well, not really.
And maybe everyone should, but maybe everyone should have a gas car too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's right, right.
You know, look at what the hackers did. The hackers shut down the pipeline, and then there was gas shortages. So you might have been thankful you had an electric car.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, again, it would have been easier to solve that gasoline issue than it would have been to try to solve that same issue with electricity, because electricity is not really portable in that sense.
Right. Right.
And I just
And
think
then
these are things that. But
anytime there's a disaster, an impending disaster, typically the leading indicator is power goes out. I hadn't thought of that until you brought it up.
and there you go. And you know, at the marina, we had some severe storms this year, and like you could tell the people who didn't have their golf carts charged because there was no power for like 3 days, and they
Yeah.
were driving. These are just little things you look at and you go, okay,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's a kind of wish you had a gas powered golf cart. I mean, mine's electric, but like you knew, like, you know, not everyone's going to be 100% charged all the time, and then when that disaster hits, then what?
Yeah.
Again, you saw what happened with the pipeline and hackers. Like I said, I don't know what's going to be. Is it going to be weather? Is it going to be, you know, terrorism? Is it going to be geopolitical some shit or a war? Is it going to be cyber terrorism? I just think in the next 50 years, I'm going to see something. It might be severe. It might not be severe. But if you look at the last 50 years and what happened, if you look at the 50 years before that, and shit, every 10 years before that, something was happening. Like,
Yeah.
I just feel in the next 50 years, I'll see at least one or two major events in this world. Don't know what they are, and I don't know how it's going to affect me. And I'm not going to go like super prepper. Like I'm not digging a bunker out back. But having power without 7 days was enough for me to go, oh, maybe I don't want to have just electric cars.
Right. You just don't want to be vulnerable. Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know, just something to think about. It's
Mhm.
Unless you can give me like a battery pack it's good for 40,000 miles. I don't know. I think we're probably talking hydrogen at that point.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, imagine if you're one of those high-rise buildings. What do? You can't have your own generator. You can't have solar panels. You're just fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. The nice way to tie it all right back to the beginning. But you know, back when I was growing up in Asia, we lived in high-rise buildings, and then typhoons or hurricanes would come by, and then you're right, the first thing that would go off is the power. And I remember walking down the stairs from like the 16th floor in the pitch dark. So you're right. What do you do? What do you do?
Yeah, how about that bike you said you're going to buy?
It's hard to bring that down 16 floors.
Well, you know, you can't even buy a fucking bike right now because of supply chain shortage. You can't even get a bike. So you better
true.
start walking. That's all I got, man. I'll catch you.
Yeah. All right.